The Zrelvians as a people had long since learned not to hunt humans. Raids on human colonies, by anyone other than humans themselves, was very rare indeed. Even Olep's pirate ship had not dared, especially not after taking on human crew members. But the Zrelvian pirate ship that called itself Rising Claw in their language certainly had nothing but disdain for the rules of their own people, never mind others. They knew they could never go back, and they still wanted to hunt humans, the greatest prey. But they had enough low cunning to understand they could not outmatch humans in stealth technology, and all races had learned not to even try. So, to their credit, they tried to find a way around the problem. They approached a human refueling station that orbited a gas giant in an otherwise uninhabited system. They claimed to be victims of a pirate attack themselves, and trailing debris from previous conquests to prove it. They were given approval to dock, and came in slow. They wanted to leak fuel as well, but there were too many risks to themselves in doing that. So they waited, drawing within weapons range but not firing right away. A human cruiser was docked, drawing fuel. They waited, they waited, they waited. They drew closer. The humans suspected nothing, they reasoned. And why should they? Humans were the masters of stealth and surprise attacks. Surely no one would turn the tables on them. They got as close as they dared, just outside the blast radius of their own weapons. And then, fire, snarled the chief huntress. The blast, a lance of green energy that was partly plasma, ripped into both the human cruiser and the cables connecting it to the fueling station. The resulting explosion was more spectacular than the Zrelvians had anticipated. The explosion rocked the human cruiser and sent it spinning away from the now destroyed refueling station. The Zrelvian pirate ship was almost as badly affected, pushed back with some intermittent system failures. The blast smashed into the bridge of the human cruiser Invictus, and cries of pain erupted from all within. All, that is, who were still alive. Captain Darian Wells was not amongst them. He died instantly. Commander Andrew Connors was knocked from his own chair, second-degree burns to his left arm and jaw. He rolled in pain, but also instinctively away from the danger. He came up against the crew pit railing. When there was silence from the captain, he called for a damage report. For a moment there was no answer. Then the communications officer spoke up, coughing in the smoke. F forward shields down. Damage. Active superstructure and forward weapons. Life support at 40%. Captain, Andrew said. No answer. Captain, he's dead, sobbed the science officer. I think the three of us are the only. She was interrupted by a bout of coughing, only ones left on the bridge. There were a handful of groans of disagreement from the computer and weapons operatives in the crew pit below. But clearly, the captain was gone, which meant Andrew was in command. He grew cold for a moment, retreating within himself. He had never wanted this. He had only joined the space fleet of the United Stars as an alternative to mandatory civil service tenure, and had been promoted by circumstance rather than ability. Right about now, he was wishing he had taken 6 years in a bureaucratic desk job instead. He snapped out of it. He would do what must be done. Turn the ship around. What? The science officer spluttered. We're going to use their own trick against them, the communications officer realized. Andrew nodded, trying not to think about the pain he was in. And besides, as you said, forward weapons are damaged anyway. We'll have to use the rear. Wait! He snapped his fingers. What about the cloaking device? The science officer squinted at her readouts. Intact, but power is fluctuating too much to use it, and they'd expect us to do that anyway. Turn the ship around. There was a pause. Air, sir. Navigator is dead. The science officer lowered her eyes. Oh. Cursing himself inwardly, Andrew gently moved the body aside. There were a couple of sparks from the console, but by pushing the buttons gingerly and cautiously, he managed. Right the ship, the chief hunter shouted. The Seekers, navigators of the Rising Claw, stopped the ship spinning. Visual, the chief huntress barked. Part of her still wished to be chasing prey on foot on the ancient homeworld, but one hunted where one could. The hunt was a life. The screen flickered to life. The human cruiser was limping away, but its rear shields were up. The huntress was unsurprised. Humans were worthy prey, after all, and would do what they must. As would she. Commence Phi, she began to say, but even as she did, a quartet of glowing orange orbs of light launched from the enemy vessel. Rear torpedoes, of course. Naturally, the weaponeer carried out her order anyway, opening fire. The lance of green plasma struck one of the torpedoes by chance, causing it to detonate prematurely. The other three hammered into their own shields. Keep firing, the huntress snarled, but the weaponeer was already on it. Technically, she could discipline him for presumption, but she understood and agreed. This hunt had already presented more of a challenge than she had anticipated, but she should have known better. And besides, she appreciated initiative in her officers. That was one of the reasons they had gone pirate in the first place. Their next blast was again blocked by the human shields. Keep firing, she snarled. Then, reclining on her personal lounge pad, then growled in puzzlement. Why haven't they cloaked? We must have damaged them too much, one of the seekers suggested. Hopefully it is so, she agreed. We need them weak. But thinking the humans weak was underestimating them, and that was exactly the mistake they should not have made, and exactly what Andrew was counting on, gritting his teeth against his burn trauma. He contacted engineering. Anybody alive down there? Some of us. A ragged voice came back. He didn't recognize it. Probably some chain of command. Losses down there too. Can you modify our shields in a specific way? The power losses we've suffered? It'll be chancy, the voice answered. Risk we have to take. Next time the enemy fires, I want you to... Fire again, the huntress commanded. As they did, one of the seekers shouted in alarm. No, the enemy's shield is... Too late. They saw their own plasma beam warp, then bulge back at them. It slammed into their shields. The huntress was knocked off her lounge pad, and one of the seekers was thrown clear of their station. Before they could recover, another wave of torpedoes slammed into them. The other seeker's console exploded in his face. All the officers were sent tumbling. The chief huntress wanted to return fire, but would it just be reflected at them again? Before she could make up her mind, another wave of torpedoes struck home. For a moment, the lights went out and gravity with it. Then auxiliary power cut in, and they landed painfully on the floor. No weapons. The surviving seeker had additional wounds now. No weapons left. The enemy is signaling us. On screen, the huntress fur flattened. A single human face glared at her out of the darkness, but there was no smile. No! She had made them angry. You killed our captain in the first salvo, he said. I suppose I should congratulate you for that. As second in command, I had to take over. How did you reflect our attacks? The huntress asked. Due to the power fluctuations from the damage, I was able to cause our shields to bulge outwards and push your own fire back at you. It was a tactic you used in your war against us once. Actually, there is no war, the huntress corrected him wearily. There is only the hunt, and the hunt is the life. Your lack of understanding of reality is noted. I can tell from your ship readouts that you are a pirate, probably not even a privateer. So this isn't the start of another war. There's that, at least. He hissed, more in pain than anger. She supposed she had wounded him in the initial attack, too. We surrender, she said, for lack of anything better to say. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, No, no. The huntress was puzzled. What do you mean? I mean, your surrender is rejected. He looked to the side and said, Finish them. Then he turned and looked at her again, and now he did smile, but it was a painful grin that was utterly without mirth. Then he let loose that signature laugh, that terrible barking howl. She hung her head and whimpered. She understood. This was a concept their two races had in common. Revenge. She closed her eyes, hearing only his laughter until the next wave of torpedoes hit, and she lost the hunt forever. The Invictus had radioed for repairs, but it would take a while for repair crews and reinforcements to arrive. In the meantime, they salvaged what they could from the dead Zrelvian pirate ship. Due to the differing technologies and the damage, there wasn't much. Andrew had his wounds tended to, healing gel smeared over the burn wounds, and bandages, of course. The pain hadn't fully subsided. He couldn't take enough painkillers for that. Had to stay on duty. They'll probably promote me to captain for this, Andrew said dully. There was no joy in his voice. Should we not have taken at least one of the Zrelvians prisoner for questioning? The science officer asked him. Andrew noted she didn't bother to mention Mercy. No, they would just try to find a way to hunt us again. No further objections were raised. There would be memorials for the captain and the other casualties, of course. And technically, they had won a victory here. Andrew just wished it hadn't been necessary.